All right, so good morning, everyone. Thanks, Peter, for the introduction here to modular modules and construction. I feel it's kind of the two top words yesterday and today are digital and modular. So if you walk through the hall and you talk to folks very quickly, we have modular and digital somehow as the top scoring solutions to many of our challenges. So I'm really looking forward to discuss with my panelists, and I want to introduce them first. So welcome Denise. Denise Dunn. She's an experienced, has experience in process development, manufacturing, operations and program management, and is currently serving as the executive director for the Amgen Singapore biologics plant. And she had different other roles previously in Singapore for ensuring rapid new product introductions and also working in clinical operations, also for Lonza. Welcome, Denise. Richard. Richard is the technical director at GSK for the two API commercial manufacturing sites here in Singapore. And he's also the one who has introduced at GSK the first commercial API capabilities in the space of continuous manufacturing. And we will hear from him also a little bit how this all continuous manufacturing will come together with elements of rapid scaling and modular design. And Austin. Austin is the technical director and group head of technology for the PM group. And he leads both the central SME group and the technology team. And he's also actually a colleague of mine in the Bioforum Technology Roadmap team. I realized I should show up there more often, I think, and also one of the members of the Facility of the Future organizing committees at the ISPE. And he's leading there also the modular and mobile design team. Okay. So yeah, let's get started. I think, as I mentioned before, we hear a lot about modular now from Peter, a good outline. Yesterday, actually, from the colleagues from Thermo Fisher, we have heard what are a bit the industry challenges, what are the needs that we should address with that. And so my first question to all three of you is, what does modular mean for you in your roles in solving problems and adapting and getting ready for the future? Who wants to start?
Okay, I'll start. So I promise you I'll give you a simple answer in the end, but I think I'll start by making an observation, and that is that I feel, in my experience, 30 years experience in facility design, I feel that the pharmaceutical industry hasn't really embraced what is truly modular until only recently, and that was highlighted in Peter's presentation. Let me say that as an engineering company, we've often been approached in the past by clients saying they want their facilities to be modular. But what does that mean? Your question, what does that mean? And historically in the past, the approach, the general thinking has been to think of the modular construction approach. Is it going to be a fully modular facility, structural modules like QBio, PharmaJewel, key plants? Is it going to be pods? And really, that's not the full story. The answer, I think, lies in what the project drivers are in terms of is it quality you're looking at? Is it speed to market? Is it because of the site location? So the answer lies in that. And in the past, because people are focused on construction is only one small part of the process. And typically, if you're trying to speed to market, you got to do the design, you got to do the procurement and construction. If you're only focusing on construction, you're missing other elements in the project phase. So for me, the missing element is modular design. And as I said, that was highlighted in Peter's presentation. In recent years, and yes, it would be nice nice to see you at the Bioforum meeting sometime. But in Bioforum, we've issued a number of papers. We did a technology roadmap in 2016. We did a white paper in 2019, and only recently just published a paper in 2021. And those papers highlight both a modular design approach and a modular construction approach. And I can go into details later about the modular design. But briefly, to answer your question, for me, a modular facility is a modularly designed facility which takes in elements of modular construction that meets the business and project objectives for that particular facility.
Okay, thank you. Richard, you want to go next? Yeah.
Yeah, so I think just to add on to that a little bit further, I mean, Peter earlier, did a really great job at summarizing what are some of the major challenges and constraints that we face as a pharmaceutical industry in terms of the drivers. I think, when I think of modular, I just think of essentially anything where you can take some element of standardized design combined with some standardized construction, prefabrication, for example, and apply those in a manner that allows you to affect business benefit, benefit for the business, benefit for the customer. So in the small molecule API world, which is where I largely come from, it's been kind of the same for 200 plus years, right? Batch chemical processes, and those in that world, batch size is kind of king. If you design a facility, if you design your equipment that are too large compared to the inevitably inaccurate sales forecast of a new product, then you're going to have a facility that's way underutilized. But if you design it too small and the product grows, then you find you can't keep up, and that's in many ways even worse. So how do we move to a system, a platform where we can be both multi-product but also flexible in terms of the scale and responsiveness to get to market quicker as well? And I think and I'll talk about it later in the afternoon around continuous processing, but we find that continuous processing in the small molecule world is a different modality, and one that is very much in parallel with the benefits and the philosophies of modular design.
Thank you.
Right. So for me, I think, again, just to summarize, I fully agree with the two gentlemen over here, and then also what Peter has shared earlier on. In my perspective, basically, the way I look at modular, right, to simplify it down, I look at it like Lego design, right? So if I have my facility, when I run my operations, right, if I have to bring in a new, let's say a new molecule or a new modality, right, how fast can I actually bring this process in? Right, so the easier it is for me to say plug and play, there is a certain section of the process unit that I can replace quickly, right? That would enable me to be more efficient and more agile, right, in responding to the different dynamics of the market today. Because if you look at the situation in the market today, right, you may have a forecast 3 years out. How accurate is that? Nobody can be sure right now, right? So we want to be able to react very quickly to what's changing in the market, right? And then so if you need to bring in a certain new technology or a new equipment, how efficient can we do that? So a modular type of concept will enable us to do that, right? Because it's like Lego, right? If I can bring this part out, I put another part in and it continues to run. And then what are the enablers for modular, right? The way I look at it would be single-use technology, for instance, is an enabler for modular technology, right? Because stainless steel, legacy facilities in the past where everything's piped up, what happens is, in order for you to bring in something new, you will have to be cutting into stainless steel, right? You have all kinds of then environmental monitoring to take care of, facility investments, capital investments to take care of. But as you move along more and more into the, as single-use technology advances and help us enable that process, that helps to simplify things as well.
Thank you, Denise. Actually, as part of the preparation for this panel, we met a few times, and you explained to me modular in a way that I really understood it the first time with the MRT system of Singapore. Do you want to share that with us?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. So thank you for reminding me about that, right? So if you think about it, right? So it's just sharing a little bit on Amgen's philosophy on process development and platform processes, right? Because the way I think about modular, right? Everything needs to work hand in hand. So process scientists and process engineers need to have that handshake. So how do we do that? So imagine the Singapore MRT system, for instance, right? If we have dedicated lines, right, that makes it very inefficient to move people from one place to another, right? So identifying common points where you can connect the lines together, that helps to transfer people more efficiently, right? So if you think about it from a process standpoint, dedicated modular processes, right, that's going to be very, very inefficient for your process, because imagine you will have to have a line for, say, product A, another line for product B, another line for product C, right? So if you think about it in the sense of the MRT system that we have, right? So what are the common points that we can connect together and then basically build a modular process platform where the expansion of that process in a modular approach, right, that would help to make it more efficient, right, to move your product pipeline for a polymodal portfolio to manage that more efficiently, right? So the way to think about it is, for every drugs, like a new product, for instance, where are the product quality attributes that are common, right? So list them down, right? And then think about it, next step, right? What are the common methods that can be used to then test for these product quality attributes? Cell line. Are there processes, can we keep to using the same cell line for processes, for the different products that's coming in? Because the more you can keep to that, because that then informs what's your cell culture process, right? So how would your cell culture process look like? Can we keep them similar? Can we make it platform? Next on downstream, right? Again, for downstream process, what are the similar points? What can we keep common? What are the unit ops that needs to change, right? Then formulation, filling, the containers that you use, the devices that your drug substance is going to go into, right? So if you think about that and then you map it out, right? So what are the common points that, we can ensure that the process is platform, because then that would then influence how your facility design should be, and then that would then influence how your construction should be. And then again with that, if you have new molecules come in, and if you follow that modular concept, right? And then, introducing a new molecule or a new modality into your facility is going to be much more efficient.
Thank you. Richard, do you have an example to share also from JSK along the MRT line?
No, maybe not quite as elegant as the MRT example, but just to expand a bit further, right? So when we talk about modality, and Greg has shared separately around modality, it means at different levels, can be observed at different levels, right? So you can have modality, or modularity, I mean, in your equipment versus your room versus a sort of suite or module level versus a whole building. And I think, again, from the small molecule perspective, in GSK, what we've done is take an approach with continuous processing where, while maybe paradoxically, continuous processing, you really essentially are designing the equipment around the process, which is very different from the normal batch world where you're sort of jamming processes to work in the same common fixed batch vessels and equipment, but which seems the opposite of modularity. But in reality, you can design modularity at the sort of unit operation scale. So within a facility, you can have a common set of utilities, your feeding systems, your nitrogen, your cooling and heating systems, and you can basically plug and play in individual small scale units that can run your continuous process. There can be a small scale skid for the reactors, for separations, for feeding, and they all use the same sort of standardized interface approach in terms of how data and power and utilities are connected. And so we derive modularity from that approach. You're designing skids that are specific to the product, but those skids all are interchangeable in a sense in terms of the framework of the overall facility.
So we are pretty aligned, I guess, and we all know what modular means for us. So the question to Austin, when you look from the outside to companies like we are here, and you compare how we apply modular, are we aligned as an industry from the projects you're running, and or do we need to do more there?
We definitely need to do more. So I think both Richard and touched on elements of what we need to do, and I think controlling the language is one of the things. Modular design, and Richard, you were talking about it there. I think we need to think of modular design in different levels. So modular design at the unit level, unit operation level, modular design at the room level, modular design at the suite level, and modular design at the building level. And I think that's, if we start to talk about those elements, then at least we can have a controlled conversation about if a client comes to an engineering company and says, I want a modular building. So yes, we absolutely have to go to modular design. And typically what you'll find is that you're going to be doing modular design at the unit operation level. And modular design effectively means breaking things down into smaller elements which can be repeated either in the same building or repeated in another building, pretty much like standardized design. So if, unit operation, bioreactors, having common bays, that's great. You can also have common rooms. So maybe you want to have a common room of a washroom, for instance, that could be repeated again and again. Sanofi are building a new facility here in Singapore. That is a fully modularly designed building all the way to level 4, because it's going to be, the building itself is going to be repeated again. Adjacent to that, you've got to think about the modular construction approach. And as I said earlier, you've got to, the modular construction approach has to match the business drivers for that particular project. But there are different approaches to modular construction. And again, if you think of them in levels, level 1, skids, super skids. Level 2, clean rooms, whole clean rooms. Level 3 is multiple clean rooms, like multiple pods together. And level 4 is the actual structural modules, like the PharmaDual, key plants, QBio type. And if you have a conversation with a client on modular design, modular construction, and get an alignment on what you do, then I think the industry can move forward. And just another point, the modular construction approach doesn't necessarily, on the level, doesn't necessarily have to match the modular design approach. So you could have a fully modular level 4 building and a modularly constructed to level 2, depends on the business drivers. And this is in one of the white papers that the Bioforum group has put out. This approach is explained, and I think if we can control the language and get the industry talking about the same thing, then I think we'll move forward in a better way.
Okay, thank you. We heard a lot that one of the benefits of modular is obviously speed, and that we can plug and play, copy, paste, and so on. And how do we address the elements of quality and compliance, especially requirements that are changing between different countries? Just thinking of modular, you would ideally even start a project without an URS because you take it over, which is in many countries a total no-go for, getting anything through the approval process. How are you addressing those dimensions with your partners in quality and also with regulators? You have some examples to share, probably. Denise or Richard? Yeah.
Yeah, so maybe I can start a little bit,
Yeah.
and then the rest of you can add in if I've, if you have additional items to add. So I think, in terms of modular approach, what helps is, if one site's tested and proven already, right, this modular approach can then go to, a different site. If you build a copy and paste, facility over. So for instance, in Amgen, Singapore basically had the first single-use site that's in the Tuas facility right now. We subsequently then built a similar copy and paste facility into our Rhode Island plant area. So in terms of the construction work, right, and then the entire, the qualification work of the side of things, time is reduced, right, again, because of, the work that has already been put in, the first facility that we have. Now, the challenge continues, though, that we continue to have a hurdle over the regulatory piece, right, because at this time, there is still, we are unable to basically have any form of reduction in terms of, the number of say a PPQ run that needs to happen, right, at the site. So even if it's a cut and paste process from facility 1 to facility 2, right now regulations still have us, do minimum 3 PPQ and that sort of things, right? So I think that area has room to continue to grow, right, and develop. And obviously, the more, we can come together. To me, it's really early engagement as well with agencies and with our quality counterparts. I recall when we first started the Singapore facility, for instance, right, because the technology was new, right, and then also the way we wanted to run and operate the plant, it's a little bit different from a traditional stainless steel facility. So a lot of work actually gone into the early engagement with, agencies like FDA, EMA, right, to ensure that they have a good understanding of how we are approaching the operations. Why is it that, single-use facilities are gonna be, in terms of compliance and quality standards, similar or, basically on par with traditional stainless steel facilities, right? So I think it's really more about the education part, making sure that there is understanding from, folks, quality areas, regulators, right, on what we are doing, right, to really have that. And also, like I said, again, for me, it's really the whole part around getting the hurdle across the regulatory piece, which is, if we can move, for me, blue sky moment would be, if I were gonna be able to move from one place to another, same product, same facility, copy, paste, one PPQ run, verification we're done, that really would help improve that speed to market vision that all of us have.
One training and one SOP.
One training, one SOP, one equipment, one run.
Yeah, no, exciting, yeah. Richard?
Yeah, it's a good question, and it's complicated. And Denise's comments are spot on. But I think there's the operational aspect and the sort of validation aspect, and then there's the regulatory. What even do you need at the regulatory approval level? If you're replicating a site somewhere else, the same design, same facility, as you say, but you're moving it to a different location, does that require? Normally you would say that would require a separate regulatory approval as well. What's the process for that? We, excuse me, haven't, on the GSK side, we haven't faced that from a true modularity perspective. I think in terms of the modality aspect, and continuous processing, it's quite new, and the facilities that we put in here were the first of its kind, certainly in GSK, but probably some of the more complex ones globally. And we had engagements with the regulators from early on. And I mean, the good thing is regulators, forward-thinking progressive regulators like the FDA and even the PMDA in this space are quite interested in understanding the applications of these kind of technologies, because they see it as a way of minimizing drug shortages. At the end of the day, that's kind of their main driver, is minimizing the risk of drug shortages, along with, whether it's for quality reasons or for production reasons. And so if you can advocate working with them, like, this is the benefit that we will see from a drug supply perspective without sacrificing quality, or ideally with improved quality, the benefits are clear, and I think they can understand that. And they've been keen to engage, not just at the sort of theoretical level, but actually coming to sites, coming here, for example, to our Singapore facilities, seeing the facilities in person in a non-inspection environment, and getting both educated, but having it as a two-way dialogue and engaging both ways. And so actually, and not just the PMDA and the FDA, we've had a number of other regulatory bodies come as well. But the key is that engagement early so that when it comes time to actually introduce a new product or introduce that, and qualify it and validate it and use it commercially, that you've taken out a lot of those hurdles. There's always going to be regulators coming to the site who are inexperienced, right? For any global supply site, you're going to get your sort of rest of world markets who won't know. And so you have to be prepared for that education aspect as well. Make sure on your site, within your company, you have the ability to educate the regulators who may come in with no experience as to what the benefits are and how you operationalize it and how your quality systems are compliant with your general ICH principles, for example, and even if you're taking a different approach to it.
Okay, thank you, Richard. What we always hear from the audience actually in feedbacks is examples are of most interest in those conversations. So before we go into the Q&A question, is there any example from the industry, Austin, that you want to share where you say, yes, this is the Lego, the MRT, and everything together everyone should be aware of?
Yeah, good question. There are a few examples, and just finishing up on the points we were just talking about there, I just wanted to add that from an engineering company perspective, getting quicker regulatory approval is also an argument for standard designs, because if you're repeating those designs again and again, then obviously the regulators will get familiar with that approach and it will be an easier process for the user companies. One thing I would say about that is when I say standard facility design, I don't mean 100% exactly the same. It's not like your iPhone connector, which has to be the same. Standard facility design is a loose term. It's about 80% standard. Standard design is pre-engineered, pre-designed, and it's about 80% standard, because obviously when you repeat something in a different location, there may be something you need to localize, whether it's the orientation or the country local codes or whatever it is, you need to, so it's 80% standard. So going to some examples, obviously from my own company, I would say a great example would be this new Sanofi facility. When we started the project, the client said they wanted it modular. So we had the debate about what does modular mean. And I took them through the process of what we do in Bioforum and the project drivers. And in the end, the requirement for the project was we wanted a modular design facility to level 4 and a modular constructed facility to level 2, which is really maximizing prefabrication off-site, but not going to big modules such as pods or the structural modules. So that Sanofi facility is actually being designed in two locations. One is France and one is in Singapore, and they are effectively the same facility. And within the Sanofi network, there are opportunities now for the modules within those facilities, level 1 to level 4, to be repeated again within the network.
Okay, good, thank you. Okay, Q&As. Any questions?
Thank you. Very insightful. Pierre Winner-Pennings. I'm part of the ISPE Singapore. One question, we learned about modular and how it means for the process and the construction, and I'm looking at the digital part. How helpful is the digital world to achieve the modular? How do you integrate that? Is it an enabler or a necessity to go digital when we go modular?
It's a good question again. I would say we're on a journey. Everyone's on a journey in terms of digital. I mean, again, speaking from an engineering company perspective, we have a history of using digital systems in our designs, you know, intelligent PNIDs, AutoCAD, BIM, etc. Where we've struggled in the past is to make everything join together into a digital asset and ultimately what you can convert into a digital twin. As I said, we're on a journey of getting our unit operation modules designed. We have an in-house design tool called Design Space, which originally started as a architectural tool to repeat modules and get a very quick architectural layout. But we're on a journey now of adding intelligence to those modules, you know, utility data, cost data, size data, everything like that. And I think once we get this library of different modules, then that will help in the facility design.
Probably from my end as well. So I think what we need to distinguish between when we talk digital, what is it? Huh? And the one thing is the construction part and how can digital twins help us, how can modeling help us. And then on the other hand is how we run a modular facility. And the more modular you go, the more crossovers you have also somehow with products. You have some logistics, chain of custody, all these kind of things that you potentially have not separated from a construction perspective anymore. And with that, all your planning tools, the visibility on ongoing processes, process verification, data, and so on, I would also consider digital, and that it really plays a really big role. So if you look into a modular facility in a clinical operation space, and you have 2-3 batches running, I mean, the amount of complexity just from the tubing and, you know, it's like 3 intensive care patients that are kind of having a lot of different in and outlets and everything, and getting that, you know, secured with that you don't make any mistakes on where to adjust or which valve to open and these kind of things. A lot of digital tools are of big support there and actually in use in our facility.
I just want to add on the operational side of things. I advocate for digitalization, right? Because you know, when you run your operations day to day, right, the consistency really can be better achieved when, you know, things are, you know, being digitalized. And you know, end of the day, it's all about the big data as well, right? Because you collect so much data from your process, whether it's modular or not, right? What do you do with the data? How can you efficiently use the data to really help in terms of, you know, continuing to run your operation? So for me, digitalization is definitely an enabler for, you know, speeding things up, and then also partnering with, you know, so if you end up having modular facilities where it's going to get easier and easier and more efficient in bringing in new equipment or new unit operations, you don't want the operations to be slowing things down, right? So with digitalization, it helps to enable that things go hand in hand at the right timeline.
Yeah, actually, I think just to close that out, I think it's, you know, digital as a continuum means a lot of different things, but I think at the end of the day, you don't necessarily need to have advanced digitalization capabilities to enable modularity, but I think, like with many things about digital, you can extract a lot more value out of it, whether it's for new product introduction or for getting the benefit out of your routine operation. I think digital just enables that value extraction much more significantly.
Another question over there, yeah?
I don't know.
Thank you. I'm from Cytiva, and I'm a big advocate for modular design, and I would argue QBO is not necessarily a construction one, but that's probably another discussion. But the point I was going to ask is, so agree the modular perspective, but we have many companies invested billions of dollars in non-modular facilities that are, I guess analogy would be the US railroads in the old days that can't scale out. So I guess the question is, what is the challenge or appetite of these larger entities to move to modularization, given that they've sunk so much cash in fixed assets that are not amenable to this type of approach?
Wants to take that?
I'll just start briefly. Yeah, I think at the end of the day, it's all, to me, it's all product driven. You know, the product is king, and so you need any business case is going to be driven based off of how we're going to get the benefit out of it. And inevitably, for our big MNCs and pharma, it's going to be about how to enable a specific product or a suite of products that they see coming down the line. So it was, you know, on the small molecule side, it was really difficult getting away from exactly the issue you say, which is heavily invested in large, multi-purpose, batch scale equipment, which has been the mainstay of the chemical industry for literally for centuries. And so to do an investment, even a relatively modest investment, you know, let's say barely double-digit millions of pounds into a continuous facility was, it took effort. And we had done research for a good decade on the R&D side, process development, to apply continuous processing, let's say, for new chemical entities. But the problem with any new product is they don't always make it to the market, and as luck would have it, almost all the ones that we looked at didn't make it ultimately to the market. We actually made the conscious decision, and it was partially pushed from us on the manufacturing side, to actually take one of our existing, already established assets and switch it over to this new modality, taking advantage of the modularity for that. And it was a tough decision. Because the change management aspects of switching over, in our case, we picked, the business case was partially driven by the benefit coming from inventory, a much faster cycle time for the material. And because it's fairly expensive material, you get a significant inventory and cycle time reduction benefit. But that also meant, as a high-value product, it was going to lots of drug products, and therefore the change management aspect of that was quite complicated. But the business benefit was driven based off of that value, and so that was ultimately the case. And we saw the net present value, the ROI on that investment was worth it. It wasn't a huge capital investment, to be fair, and it wasn't a enormous facility, which helps, of course, as well as modularity, but the effort involved in terms of getting regulators on board and to learn ourselves, to educate ourselves in terms of how to run this kind of system, it did take a lot of effort. But the benefit can come long term as saying, this gets your foot in the door, and now you can apply it to other ones, as we have done a few times since.
Thank you for the question. This is a great question. And just to add on a little bit more to what Richard's said. So I think the reality of things is, what's going to work is actually a hybrid model, right? I don't think we're going to be able to go full on modular, right? Because again, the reality is some processes, right, are just economically makes more sense to go into a traditional facility that we have, right? Just because of the cost of goods, you know, what the process can deliver, right? And then there is a class of products, right, that goes really well into modular, single-use type facilities where, you know, you can bank on speed, and just because the product and the process is able to deliver to that. So I think it's all, at the end of the day, a balance between the economics of scale, right? Modular facilities are going to cost money too, right? That's a reality. Single-use technology is not cheap, right? So you kind of have to balance what the process needs, what the product can deliver, and then versus basically, you know, what's the investment into your facility that makes sense for the product. So at least from my personal opinion, it's a hybrid facility structure for companies are probably the at this point the best way to think about things.
Yeah, and I would say from an engineering company perspective, we're seeing all types of facilities still being built. We're still seeing large-scale stainless steel facilities being built, which arguably are less flexible. They're still multi-product, but less flexible than a single-use facility. Obviously, there's a lot of demand for flexible facilities. Certainly, MABs the new modalities, cell and gene therapy, because the product, there's multiple different products, and they don't even know what the pipeline is in the future. So you have to have that design flexibility built in. The other thing I've seen is client companies making some really tough decisions. So where you have processes that are now being modified to go on single-use platforms, they're looking at their existing legacy plants and saying, what can I do with this? And a recent example, we were doing a site master plan for a company in North America. They had a 10-year-old facility, which was a continuous perfusion process, great facility. As I said, 10 years old, probably cost about $250 million to build. And basically, they were transferring their process to a new single-use platform. And the challenge to us was, what can we do with this existing facility that's only 10 years old? And looking in the product pipeline, the answer was actually, well, nothing. So that's why client companies are now looking for that flexibility to get that longevity out of future facilities.
Thank you. So I get a lot of signals on time and questions, but I think we have another question.
Yeah,
Great.
Just a couple of quick questions. You've articulated lots of good pros of modular. Can you just throw out one con, where it's gone wrong for you, just as a bit of a balance? And secondly, today, what is the weakest link in going modular? Is it the digital part? Is it the construction part? What is failing? What's letting you down?
So probably I can just speak a bit to the weakest link in operations that I see a little bit is there's a component also of operational excellence. So it's about technology forward, but also impact backward, or what do I want to achieve planning backward, and to have the balance between how much I'm driving the technology, I'm bringing in all these tools, all the functionalities, and where do I say I'm not customizing too much for the specific product. And that is, where for me operational excellence comes into play. For example, then understanding the process, really seeing where can I make some adjustments to existing facilities with innovative, creative ideas. Can I use, can I use a fermenter, for example, as a buffer prep for a single-use box in a box that stands next door in proximity to my utilities, things like this. And who is addressing that in the company? How open are we discussing those? And what are the right partners also that are not only providing you equipment or modules, but also going through with you through such discussions. I think that's really coming to a facility of the future, especially on a brownfield setting, absolutely key and something we, I think need to get better overall.
Yeah, I'll say a couple of things. First of all, cost premium. It's not always cheaper to go for a modular construction approach. So if you do decide that approach, you have to be clear about what your project drivers are. That's one thing. The challenge for us on standard design, modular design, is we're in a very rapidly changing technology environment. And so how do we, at what point do we make a base, and how do we keep current? So that's obviously a challenge.
So the last signal I got was this one. I don't know what it means to me after this session, but I think we're really over time. So with this, I want to thank you. Thanks for participating. Thanks for your interest, for the questions, and we're all around still today, so can continue the conversation. Thank you very much.
Very nuanced discussion, and it could have gone on for the day. I could have sat and listened to it for the day. So thanks very much, everyone. I think the last couple of years have proven one thing. We can innovate, we can move the industry on quickly, and thanks to the panel very much. We're moving now to a networking break, okay? So it is 10:19, okay? If everyone could be back at 11 o'clock sharp, okay, for the next presentation. Thank you.